All the chefs mocked the poor dishwasher girl because of her recipe with 4 potatoes. Then the Millionaire CEO shocked everyone with his decision. Before we begin the story, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. 2 minutes to go live. The director shouted through the earpiece, so loud that the production team nearly ripped off their headphones. Backstage at Supreme Kitchen had turned into a battlefield. The most beloved chef of the season had suddenly fainted and was already on the way to the hospital. The problem? The show was about to begin, and now they had one competitor less. The coordinator, her hands shaking with papers, let out a muffled cry. "Oh my God, what now? Who's going to take his place? We don't have time to find another chef." That was the exact moment when a firm, unexpected voice echoed from the end of the hallway. "I can do it." Everyone turned at the same time. There she was, Clara Rivera, the dishwasher from the partner restaurant of the competition. You're from cleaning, right?" stammered one of the production assistants. "Dishwasher, yes, but I also know how to cook," Clara said, standing her ground. "If no one else can, I can. I just need a chance." The show coordinator let out a nervous laugh. "A dishwasher? You must be joking." Backstage, some contestants exchanged looks and chuckled quietly. One of them, visibly annoyed with the situation, sneered, "What's she gonna make? Soap suds puree?" But Clara didn't back down. "Let me try. I've got 4 minutes, right? I only need basic ingredients. I'll do what I know. If it goes wrong, you can cut me out. No drama." "This is television suicide," the director shouted. "It's better than going live with an empty station, isn't it?" Clara shot back. "Worse than a bad dish is an empty show." The stage coordinator looked at the countdown clock. 26 seconds. She looked at the director, then the host, then the desperate crew. There was no more time. "If it's a disaster, the blame falls on you," she warned, pointing a finger. "I'm already used to splashes," Clara replied, smiling with sarcasm. The director, with no other choice, gestured in agreement. "Put her in. Get her dressed. Get her makeup, now." Clara was pulled by 2 assistants like a rocket. They threw a new apron over the old one, clipped a mic to her waist, and sprayed setting spray on her face without even asking. She was pushed onto the stage, her heartbeat louder than the show's theme music. From the judge's box, Victor Lancaster watched closely. Billionaire, owner of the largest restaurant chain in Austin. He was the most feared judge of the competition, and also the most mysterious. While everyone whispered about the shame of putting a dishwasher on stage, he remained silent, eyes fixed on Clara with a slight smile on his lips. The host, nervous and confused, held the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are live nationwide with the 3rd season of Supreme Kitchen directly from Austin." The audience cheered. "Tonight we'll have incredible dishes, exciting challenges, and a last-minute surprise." He looked down at the card in his hand, then at Clara, who tucked her hair behind her ear, trying to look calm. "And our last competitor is—" He swallowed hard. "A dishwasher?" The audience let out a wave of murmurs. The cameras zoomed in on Clara. Her smile was calm, but her eyes knew exactly what she was doing. Chef Connor, one of the contestants and also the owner of a prestigious restaurant, laughed loudly, shaking his head with disdain. "This is going to be fun." And while the audience judged Clara with their eyes, she walked to the makeshift kitchen on stage, as if stepping into her own destiny. "Competitors, you have exactly 45 minutes to prepare a traditional American dish," announced the host, raising his hand dramatically in the air. "The clock starts now." A deafening noise filled the studio. Pots clanging, knives chopping, ovens firing up. The professional chefs rushed like Olympic athletes toward their premium stations, overflowing with expensive ingredients: fresh lobster, truffles, caviar, prime cuts of meat. Clara stood still for 2 seconds, watching the chaos around her. "Hey, dishwasher!" shouted Chef Connor, holding a giant lobster in his hands. "You just gotta stand there like a statue?" Clara smiled and waved at him as if greeting a friendly neighbor. "I'm just seeing where you all won't go," she answered, calmly walking in the opposite direction. While everyone else fought over the finest ingredients, Clara went straight to the basic stock. There she found everything nobody wanted: plain potatoes, onions, garlic, simple herbs, ordinary eggs. She picked up exactly 4 medium potatoes and tucked them into her apron as if they were treasures. 4 potatoes? One of the contestants laughed. What are you making, cafeteria mashed potatoes? No, Clara answered without even looking at him. I'm making something you've never seen before. The nearest camera zoomed in on her face. Clara winked at it with the ease of someone who had just shared an inside joke. Backstage, the production coordinator was biting her nails. Is she really doing this? With potatoes? My God, this will be a meme by tomorrow. It's going to be a disaster. Relax, said the director, eyes glued to the monitor. Let her work. Sometimes the unexpected is what makes good television. Back in the kitchen, Clara had turned her station into a graceful routine. She peeled the potatoes with precise movements, sliced them paper thin, seasoned them with sea salt and herbs no one had even noticed. Chef Connor, preparing a sophisticated lobster with champagne, made sure to pass close to her station. Wow, what an interesting smell, he said mockingly. Is that golden garlic, or did you burn something? Clara didn't stop working. That's the smell of success arriving, darling. You must be sensing it for the very first time. Some production assistants who overheard tried to stifle their laughter. Connor turned red and went back to his counter, muttering something about people with no manners. Time was ticking, and the contrast was striking. While the other chefs piled on expensive ingredients and complicated techniques, Clara did something completely different. She worked calmly, smiling as if she were cooking at home for her family. She cut the potatoes into different shapes, arranged them into a kind of golden fan, seasoned them with fresh herbs, and plated the dish like it was a work of art. Simple, but visually stunning. 10 minutes, the host shouted. Panic set in among some contestants. One was clearly nervous, dropping ingredients. Another murmured recipes under his breath as if reciting a prayer. Clara stayed calm, adjusting the final details of her dish. How can you be so calm? The contestant beside her asked, sweating nervously. Because I know I did my best, Clara said, wiping her hands on her apron. And also because potatoes have never let me down. The woman laughed nervously. You're really different, aren't you? I'm just myself. And maybe you should be yourself too, instead of trying to be like everyone else. Time, the host shouted. Everyone stopped immediately. Some chefs still tried last-second touches, but the assistants were already collecting the plates. Clara stepped back and looked at her creation. 4 potatoes transformed into something that looked like it belonged in a 5-star restaurant, yet carried the soul of homemade food. Looks like our surprise is finished, Chef Connor said, eyeing Clara's plate with disdain. Well, at least it's creative. Thank you, Clara replied, giving an exaggerated bow. Coming from you, that's almost a compliment. The judges began tasting the dishes. Victor Lancaster remained silent, watching every movement, every expression of the others. The first dish tasted was Connor's, lobster with champagne and herb foam. The judges approved politely. Impeccable technique, elegant presentation, the head judge commented. Connor smiled proudly and glanced sideways at Clara. Next, they tasted the other dishes. Polite comments, some constructive criticism, nothing that drew much attention. Until they reached Clara's plate. The first judge picked up a fork, cut a piece of the golden potato, and took a bite. He chewed slowly, stopped, chewed again, closed his eyes. Wait, he said softly. He took another piece. This time, he combined it with the herbs and the caramelized onions Clara had made as a side. His expression changed completely. Wait, who made this? He asked, looking directly at Clara. The entire studio fell silent. Even the audience stopped murmuring. Clara raised her hand timidly. Sorry if it's not good. Not good, the judge said, still chewing. It's extraordinary. The second judge, curious now, tried it too. Her eyes widened. Wow, how did you get this flavor? She asked. It's just potato, Clara replied, shrugging. Good potato, well seasoned with care. Victor Lancaster, who had remained quiet until then, asked to taste. He cut a generous piece, smelled it first, then took a bite. He chewed slowly. Clara held her breath. Victor closed his eyes for a long moment, then opened them and looked straight at her. Where did you learn to cook? He asked, his voice showing genuine surprise. From my mother, Clara answered. She always said the best food isn't the most expensive. It's the one made with intention. Chef Connor, seeing the judge's reaction, started to look visibly uncomfortable. With all due respect, he interrupted. But these are just potatoes. Anyone can make this. Clara turned to him with a sweet smile. Then why didn't you? The audience let out a collective, "Ooh." Victor Lancaster almost choked, trying to hide a laugh. The host, noticing the tension and the renewed interest of the audience, stepped closer. "Well, it looks like our last-minute surprise really did surprise the judges," he said, looking at the cameras. "Who would have thought 4 simple potatoes could cause such an impact?" The silence in the studio was so thick you could hear the buzzing of the cameras. Victor Lancaster was still holding his fork in the air, as if trying to process what he had just tasted. Suddenly, he stood up from the judges' table and began walking toward Clara. The production team panicked quietly, not knowing what was going on. Victor stopped right in front of Clara, who was nervously wiping her hands on her apron for the 5th time in a row. "Who are you really?" Victor asked with an intensity that made the audience hold their breath. "And why on earth are you washing dishes instead of running a kitchen?" Clara blinked a few times, as if trying to understand whether this was real or if she had fainted from nerves. "Well," she began, looking around and seeing all the cameras pointed at her. "I'm Clara Rivera. I'm 28. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment I share with 3 cockroaches who pay rent in breadcrumbs. The audience laughed, and I'm washing dishes because no one has given me a chance." "Until now," she finished, shrugging as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Victor stayed silent for a moment, just watching her. Clara started to feel uneasy under his intense stare. "Are you all right, sir?" she asked, tilting her head. "You look like you swallowed a frog, or an entire lobster." More laughter from the audience. Victor shook his head as if snapping out of a trance. "Clara Rivera," he repeated her name slowly. "Do you have plans after you leave here?" "Well, I have to get back to washing more dishes," she replied, "and then watch reruns of cooking shows on my couch that squeaks louder than a horror movie door." "Not anymore," Victor said, his tone suddenly very serious. The host stepped closer, trying to understand what was happening. Mr. Lancaster." Victor ignored him completely. "Clara Rivera," he said louder now so the whole audience could hear. "I would like to make you an offer, here, now. Live." The entire studio held its breath. Clara swallowed hard. "What kind of offer?" she asked, nervous. "Because if it's to sell cleaning products, I already told you I'm no good at sales." Victor smiled for the first time since tasting her dish. "I want you to be my partner in my new restaurant." The silence that followed was deafening. Then chaos broke out. The audience screamed as if they were at a rock concert. Some people jumped out of their seats. Cameras rushed to capture every possible reaction. "My goodness," the host shouted into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have just witnessed something completely unexpected on Supreme Kitchen." Clara stood frozen, her mouth slightly open, staring at Victor as if he had just spoken in an alien language. "Sorry, could you repeat that?" she asked, putting a hand behind her ear. "I think I misheard with all the noise." "You heard me right," Victor said, smiling. "Partnership, new restaurant, you and me. What do you say?" Clara looked at the screaming audience. The other contestants left speechless, and all the cameras focused on her. She stammered. "Take your time," Victor said. "You don't need to answer now." "Good thing," Clara replied, wiping her forehead. "Because my brain sort of shut down the moment you said partner. It's like someone unplugged my head." The audience laughed even harder. That's when Chef Connor, who had been in shock until that moment, suddenly jumped up from his station. "1 minute," he shouted so loud even the audience stopped making noise. Everyone turned to look at him. Connor was red with anger, pointing his finger at Clara. "She stole my recipe," he yelled, storming toward the center of the stage. "This is fraud." The studio went silent again. Clara blinked several times, then let out a genuine laugh. "Your recipe?" she asked, pointing at the 4 potatoes on the plate. "Do you have a registered recipe for peeling potatoes?" "Don't get smart with me," Connor shouted. "I saw you snooping around my station before the show started." "Sweetheart," Clara said, with the patience of someone explaining something to a stubborn child, "I didn't even know you existed before today. And besides, if you have a secret recipe for potatoes, maybe you should share it with the world. It would be a revolution in farming." Some contestants started chuckling quietly. Connor grew even more furious. "You're making a fool out of me." "I don't have to do anything," Clara replied, folding her arms. You're doing a great job all by yourself." The audience burst into laughter and applause. The host tried to regain control of the situation. "Well, folks, it seems our night is full of surprises." "Surprises?" Connor interrupted. "This is a scandal, a fraud. There's no way she made that with simple ingredients." "Why not?" Clara asked, genuinely curious. "Do you think a good potato only works if it costs $50? Victor, who had been watching the whole argument in silence, stepped closer to Connor. "Chef Connor," he said, his voice calm but firm, "do you have any proof of what you're accusing her of?" Connor hesitated for a moment. Well, it's obvious. Nobody cooks like that on the first try." "Oh, I see," Clara said, shaking her head. "So if I cook well, it's because I cheated. If I cooked badly, it would be because I'm just a dishwasher." Interesting logic. I must have missed that lesson in school. The audience applauded even louder. Victor looked at Connor with an expression that didn't hide his disappointment. "I think you need to calm down," he said. "I will not calm down," Connor shouted. "This is unfair. She doesn't deserve to be here." Clara sighed and looked straight into the cameras. "Folks at home," she said, waving, "look closely. This is the moment we find out who has class and who has, well, whatever it is that Connor has." And while Connor kept protesting and the audience laughed, Clara stood there, still processing the craziest offer she had ever received in her life, with the composure of someone who had just won the lottery and was still trying to figure out if the ticket was real. Connor wasn't finished. In fact, he was just getting started. "Don't believe her," he shouted, pulling his phone from his pocket with the urgency of someone who had just discovered the cure for cancer. "I have proof." The host tried to get closer, but Connor was already frantically tapping on his phone. "Here," he yelled, holding the device in the air like a trophy. "My assistant filmed everything backstage." Victor folded his arms, clearly annoyed with the drama, but Connor was already handing the phone to the technical director. "Put this on the big screen," Connor demanded. "Show everyone what this opportunist did." Clara watched all the fuss with the look of someone watching a bad comedy movie. "Opportunist?" she repeated, placing her hand on her chest in a theatrical gesture. "Wow, Connor, you know me so well. Want to be my biographer?" The image appeared on the studio's giant screen. There was Clara, a few minutes before the show started, walking through the production area, picking up ingredients from the basic stock. "Look," Connor pointed at the screen like a detective presenting evidence. She had access to the ingredients before everyone else. She prepared everything in advance. The audience murmured, some visibly confused. Clara looked at the image of herself on the screen, then at Connor, then back at the screen. "Let me get this straight," she said, scratching her chin thoughtfully. "You're accusing me of taking potatoes from the stockroom? Potatoes that were there for everyone to take? You had extra time to plan," Connor insisted. "That's unfair advantage." Clara let out a genuine laugh. "Connor, sweetheart, you saw what I took, right? 4 potatoes and a few basic seasonings. If that's strategic planning, then every housewife is a military genius." Some people in the audience laughed, but others seemed to take the accusation seriously. "And another thing," Clara continued, warming up. "If I had all that time to plan, do you really think I'd choose potatoes? Like if I were going to cheat, wouldn't I at least grab a shrimp? Something a little fancier?" Victor watched everything in silence, his expression growing darker. Connor, realizing he was losing ground, went for a personal attack. "Everybody can see she has no professional experience," he shouted. "A dishwasher doesn't make this kind of dish. It's impossible," Clara repeated, one eyebrow raised. "Connor, you just said I stole your potato recipe. Now you're saying I don't know how to cook. Could you pick one accusation and stick with it? You're confusing me." The audience laughed, but some of the judges seemed to actually be considering Connor's words. "Maybe we should look into this more carefully," one of the judges murmured. Clara felt the mood shifting. What had started as a triumphant moment was turning into something very different. "Everyone," she said, trying to keep her tone light, "I know it's hard to believe. I'm still trying to understand how I got this far myself. But I swear on my mother's memory that I didn't do anything wrong." "Anyone can say that," Connor muttered. "True," Clara agreed. "Anyone can say anything. Like you saying you have talent for cooking. The host, seeing the situation slipping out of control, decided to step in. "Well, folks, I think we're going to have to investigate these claims before we—" "There's no need to investigate anything," Victor interrupted, finally speaking up, his voice cut through the air like a blade. "I've been watching her from the moment she walked on stage. I saw every move, and I can assure you there was nothing wrong." Connor turned to Victor, eyes blazing. "You're defending her because you made that ridiculous proposal in front of everyone. Now you can't take it back." Victor took a step toward Connor, and everyone could feel the tension. "Watch how you speak to me," Victor said with a dangerous calm. But the damage was already done. Doubt had been planted. Cell phone cameras in the audience started recording, people whispered to each other, and Clara could feel the weight of judgmental stares. "All right," she said, raising her hands. "I think I'll go. Clearly my presence here is causing more confusion than joy." "Clara, wait," Victor called. "No, really, it's fine," she answered, already untying her apron. "It was fun while it lasted. Thank you for the experience." And just like that, Clara Rivera walked off stage, leaving behind a studio in turmoil and a millionaire who, for the first time in years, didn't know exactly what to do. The next day, Clara was back at her usual spot, the sink at Romano's restaurant, washing dishes as if nothing had happened. Except everything had happened. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, curious strangers, people offering outrageous contracts. She turned it off and put it away in the cupboard. "At least the dishes don't judge me," she murmured to herself, scrubbing a particularly dirty pan. She was so focused on her work that she didn't notice when someone walked into the kitchen. "Excuse me," said a familiar voice. Clara turned and almost dropped the pan on the floor. There was Victor Lancaster himself, standing in the middle of Romano's tiny kitchen, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary. "What are you doing here?" Clara asked, glancing around to see if anyone else had noticed his presence. "I came to talk to you," Victor answered simply. "If this is to apologize for yesterday's mess, don't bother. I'm over it already. I mean, it's been almost 24 hours, practically an eternity," she said, going back to scrubbing the pan with more force than necessary. Victor watched her work for a moment. "You're not going to ask about the proposal?" he said. "What proposal?" Clara asked without looking at him. "The one you made in front of millions of people and then had to swallow because of the scandal? That proposal?" "The proposal still stands." Clara stopped scrubbing and slowly turned toward him. "I'm sorry, what?" Victor stepped closer. "The partnership, the restaurant, everything I said yesterday, it still stands." Clara let out a disbelieving laugh. "Victor, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm pretty much persona non grata in the culinary world right now. Connor practically accused me of being some kind of food spy." "Connor's an idiot," Victor said, as casually as if he were commenting on the weather. "Maybe so, but a lot of people believed him." Victor crossed his arms and looked straight into her eyes. "I didn't believe him." Clara held his gaze for a long moment, trying to read something in his expression. "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked. "Because last night I tasted the best dish I've had in 15 years of my career," Victor answered. "And because I know how to recognize talent when I see it." Clara shook her head. "This is crazy." "Probably," Victor agreed. "But sometimes the best decisions are the craziest ones." He extended his hand to her. "Come with me," he said, with a smile she hadn't seen before. "I believe in you." Clara looked at Victor's outstretched hand for so long that he started to wonder if she had fallen into some kind of trance. "Are you all right?" he asked, giving his hand a small wave in the air. "I'm just trying to calculate how many dishes I'd have to wash to make what you probably spend on ties each month," she replied, still staring at his hand. Victor laughed. "A lot of dishes, like a lot as in many, or a lot as in, I'll need several lifetimes." "Several lifetimes," he confirmed. Clara sighed dramatically. "Fine, you convinced me, but I have one condition." "What is it?" "I do everything my way," she said, crossing her arms. "No turning me into the female version of Connor. If you want my talent, you have to accept my personality too." Victor extended his hand again. "Deal." Clara shook his hand and made a face. "Wow, you have really soft hands for a chef." "I don't cook anymore," Victor replied. "I only manage." "Oh, you're one of those chefs who became a desk boss," Clara said, shaking her head. "How sad." It's like a bird that forgot how to fly. Maybe you'll remind me how to fly again. Clara looked at him with genuine surprise. Wow, that was almost poetic. Did you practice that line in the mirror? A week later, Clara was standing at the entrance of Victor's new restaurant kitchen, taking in what would now be her workplace. It was stunning. State-of-the-art equipment, marble counters, tools that probably cost more than her car. My goodness, she whispered. This looks like the Starship Enterprise, but for food. Do you like it? Victor asked, appearing beside her. It's beautiful, Clara replied, but also a little intimidating. Like, I'm afraid of touching something and breaking it. You're a partner now. You can break whatever you want. Perfect, because I'm famous for breaking things, she said, walking toward the center of the kitchen. That's when she realized she wasn't alone. There were at least 10 employees in the kitchen, all standing still, all staring at her. Hi, everyone. Clara waved cheerfully. I'm Clara, the former dishwasher who caused all that fuss on TV. The silence that followed was so awkward, Clara could almost hear it. Tough crowd, she muttered to Victor. One of the cooks, a tall, thin man with a sour expression, stepped forward. So you're the famous Clara Rivera, he said in a tone that made it clear famous wasn't exactly a compliment. In the flesh, Clara answered, giving a small bow. And you are Tony Richardson, sous chef for 15 years. 15 years? Clara exclaimed. Wow, you must have seen a lot. I have, including plenty of people who think one TV appearance makes them chefs. Clara blinked a few times. Wow, you got straight to the point, didn't you? No sugarcoating, no small talk. I like it. It's refreshing. Tony looked surprised at her reaction. Look, Tony, Clara continued, walking right up to him. I know you all must be thinking, who's this crazy woman who showed up out of nowhere and now wants to run our kitchen? And you're right to think that. The other employees exchanged glances. But here's the truth, Clara said, looking around to include everyone in the conversation. I don't want to boss anyone around. I want to work with you, learn from you. And maybe you'll pick up a thing or two from me too. What can a dishwasher possibly teach us? Asked one of the cooks, a blonde woman in her 40s. Clara smiled. How to make the best dish with the worst ingredients. How to be creative when you don't have money. How to turn simplicity into something special. That sounds very nice, Tony said, clearly unconvinced. But a professional kitchen is not the same as cooking at home. True, Clara agreed. But you know what's the same? What makes good food truly good? Love, attention, and a little bit of soul. Soul doesn't pay the bills, someone muttered from the back. That's true too, Clara laughed. But happy customers do. And customers are happiest when they eat something made with care, not just with technique. Victor, who had been watching the whole exchange in silence, stepped forward. Everyone, he said, Clara is going to be our creative consultant and a partner in the restaurant. I expect you all to treat her with the respect she deserves. Of course, Mr. Lancaster, Tony replied, though his tone was still far from warm. Once Victor left, Clara was alone with the team. The atmosphere was as heavy as a badly made bean soup. All right, folks, she said, clapping her hands. Since we'll be working together, how about we start with something simple? Can someone show me where the basic ingredients are? Basic? Asked the blonde cook. We have foie gras, truffles, caviar. No, Clara interrupted. The basics. Potatoes, onions, garlic, eggs. The staff looked at each other as if she had just asked them to find a unicorn. Why would you want basic ingredients? Tony asked. Because, Clara said, walking toward the stockroom. With the basics you see who really knows how to cook. Meanwhile, across town, Connor Mason was in his office, reading a headline on his tablet, with the expression of someone who had just swallowed something sour. Former dishwasher becomes Victor Lancaster's partner in a revolutionary new restaurant. He threw the tablet onto the desk so hard he nearly cracked the screen. This can't be happening, he muttered to himself. His assistant, James, walked into the room at that moment. Mr. Mason? Are you all right? That woman, Connor said, pointing at the tablet. She's opening a restaurant with Victor Lancaster. Clara Rivera? James asked. I heard she's actually very talented. Connor looked at James as if he had just claimed the earth was flat. Talented? James, she's a dishwasher. A fraud. And now she's going to be my direct competitor. Well, sir, technically she was always your potential competitor. Don't start with technicalities, Connor exploded. Victor Lancaster owns the biggest restaurant chain in Austin. If he opens something new with that woman, it'll destroy me." James stayed silent, knowing better than to provoke Connor when he was in that state. Connor began pacing back and forth in his office, his mind racing a mile a minute. "I can't let this happen," he murmured. "Not after everything I built." "What do you intend to do?" James asked cautiously. Connor stopped pacing and looked out the window at the street below. "If they want to play dirty," he said with a smile that never reached his eyes, "then we'll play dirty." "Mr. Mason." "James." Connor turned to his assistant. "I want you to find out everything about this new restaurant. Staff, suppliers, opening schedule, everything." "What for?" Connor smiled again, this time even more unsettling. "To make sure they never get to open their doors." And while Connor plotted his revenge, Clara was across town, trying to win over a hostile kitchen with humor and potatoes, unaware that her new life was about to get much more complicated. 2 weeks after Clara had started working at the restaurant, Victor showed up in the kitchen on a Thursday night when almost everyone had already gone home. "Still here?" he asked, finding Clara leaning over a counter, surrounded by papers with sketches of dishes. "Trying to create the perfect menu," she answered, without looking up. "Or at least a menu that doesn't make people think I only know how to wash dishes." Victor stepped closer and looked at the drawings. They were simple but creative, dishes that turned ordinary ingredients into something special. "This looks great," he said. "Liar," Clara replied, but she smiled. "You're just being nice because I'm your partner and you're afraid I'll lose it." "Maybe," Victor admitted, "but it's actually really good." Clara finally looked at him. "You look tired. When was the last time you ate something that didn't come out of a business meeting?" Victor thought for a moment. "Good question. I don't think I remember." "That's sad," Clara said, shaking her head. "You own restaurants and you don't remember the last time you had a real meal. That's like owning a pool and forgetting how to swim." "You have a strange obsession with aquatic metaphor," observed. "And you have a strange obsession with work," Clara shot back. "Come with me." "Where?" "You'll see," she said, already grabbing her bag. "Trust me." Half an hour later, they were at the night market in downtown Austin, a place Victor had probably never set foot in before. "What is this?" he asked, looking around with genuine fascination. "This, my dear millionaire, is where real food happens," Clara answered, pulling him toward a taco stand. The place was full of people, music, and incredible smells. Victor looked completely out of his element, but also strangely charmed. "2 carnitas tacos, please," Clara ordered from the vendor. "And don't hold back on the hot sauce." "Are you sure?" Victor asked. "I'm not very good with spicy food. Trust me," Clara said. "Or do you want me to order you a kid's taco?" Victor laughed. "All right, I'll trust you." They got their tacos and sat at a plastic table next to workers, students, and families. Victor took a cautious bite of his taco, then his eyes went wide. "Wow," he murmured. "This is amazing." "I know," Clara said, taking a big bite of hers. "That's what you miss when you only go to fancy restaurants. The soul of food is on the street." "How did you find this place?" "When you earn a dishwasher salary, you learn where to find good, cheap food," she explained. "This guy here makes the best tacos in Austin, and he doesn't even have formal training. He learned from his grandmother." Victor looked around, watching people laughing, talking, eating with their hands. "It's been a long time since I've seen this," he said. "Seen what?" "People just happy with food," Victor answered. "Not analyzing, not criticizing, not posting pictures, just eating and being happy." Clara watched him for a moment. "Do you remember when cooking made you happy?" Victor stayed silent for a long time. "Sometimes," he finally said. "But it was a long time ago." "That's a shame," Clara said, "because you have incredible talent. I saw your old recipes online. They were brilliant. You researched me?" Clara blushed slightly. "Just a little, maybe a few hours, or maybe the whole night," she admitted. "But it was for professional reasons. I wanted to understand who I was working with." Victor smiled. "And what did you find out?" "That you were a brilliant chef who one day just stopped cooking and became a businessman," Clara said. "And that you have a very nice smile when you're not being Mr. Serious Executive." They looked at each other for a moment. The music of the market kept playing in the background. People passed by chatting, but it felt like they were in a bubble. "Clara," Victor began. "Yes?" He leaned closer to her at the little plastic table. I wanted to tell you that. Suddenly, a flash blinded them. Then another, and another. Got it, someone shouted. Victor Lancaster on a romantic date with the ex-dishwasher. Victor pulled away from Clara so quickly he nearly knocked over his chair. No, he muttered. No, more flashes, more photographers appearing out of nowhere. How did you find us? Victor asked, clearly frustrated. Mr. Lancaster, a reporter shouted. Is it true that Miss Rivera seduced you to get the partnership? What a stupid question, Clara said, standing up. Of course I did. My plan was exactly that. Work as a dishwasher for years waiting for a millionaire to show up. I'd make a few tacos and he'd fall hopelessly in love with me. Brilliant, right? Clara, don't answer them, Victor said, grabbing her arm. Miss Rivera, another reporter shouted. Is it true that Mr. Lancaster was pressured by his family not to get involved with someone from a lower social class? Victor stopped walking. Listen carefully, he said, his voice cutting the air like a knife. Anyone who publishes anything about this will hear from my lawyer. I'm not joking. They managed to leave the market, but the mood was completely ruined. In the car, the silence was deafening. Victor, Clara began. I'm sorry, he said, not looking at her. I didn't know they were following us. It's all right. It wasn't your fault. Yes, it was, Victor interrupted. I should have known. This always happens when I go out in public. Clara watched him drive, his jaw tight, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Are you sorry you took me there? She asked quietly. Victor didn't answer right away. No, he finally said. But maybe we should keep our relationship professional. Clara felt like she had been punched in the stomach. Oh, was all she could say. The next day, the photo was everywhere in the tabloids. The main headline read, Millionaire seduced, ex-dishwasher wins over restaurant tycoon in intimate date. Clara read the article with a heavy heart. According to the report, she was an opportunist who had used her feminine charms to manipulate Victor and get a position she didn't deserve. When she arrived at the restaurant, everyone looked at her strangely. Did you see the news? Tony asked with a mean smile. I did, Clara answered, trying to stay composed. Interesting career strategy, he commented. Tony, Clara said, turning to him, have you ever thought that maybe, just maybe, things aren't exactly the way the papers say? Of course not, he replied. Newspapers never exaggerate anything. Clara took a deep breath. She was determined not to let it affect her work, but when Victor showed up in the kitchen an hour later, pretending she didn't exist, her heart broke a little more. Across town, Victor was in his office, talking with his press advisor, David Chen. The article was bad, David was saying. But it will pass. It always does. I know. Victor replied, but he seemed distant. You did the right thing by keeping your distance from her, David went on. Relationships with employees always get complicated. She's not just an employee, Victor said. She's a partner. Even so, Victor cut him off. I didn't pull away because I'm afraid of the press. You didn't? Victor looked out the window toward the restaurant. I pulled away because, he hesitated, because I'm starting to care about her. Really care. And that scares me more than any newspaper article ever could. David was silent for a moment. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. Victor answered. I just know I can't let my feelings get in the way of her work. She deserves to succeed on her own merits. And while Victor struggled with his feelings, Clara was in the kitchen, trying to pretend her heart wasn't breaking a little more each time he ignored her. A week after the incident at the night market, the big day finally came, the pre-opening of the restaurant Roots, which Clara had insisted on naming because, as she put it, that's where good food comes from. The event was packed. Food critics, influencers, important people from Austin, and even a few curious ones who had managed to get invitations. Clara was nervous, but tried to cover it with her usual humor. All right, everyone, she told the kitchen staff. It's just one night. If we're lucky, tomorrow we'll still have jobs, Tony rolled his eyes. What an inspiring speech. Thank you, Clara replied. I practice in the mirror every day. Victor stepped into the kitchen, looking sharp in his dark suit, but Clara pretended not to notice him. Since the paparazzi incident, they had barely spoken. How are things going here? He asked, addressing Tony more than Clara. Everything's under control, Tony replied. Perfect, Victor said, and walked out without so much as a glance at Clara. Subtle as an elephant in a china shop, Clara muttered under her breath. The first 2 hours went flawlessly. Plates left the kitchen like works of art, the guests seemed satisfied, and Clara finally began to relax. That's when things started to go wrong. "Table 12 is complaining," said a waiter, coming back from the dining room with a puzzled look. "They say the salmon tastes like detergent?" Clara frowned. "Detergent? That's impossible. I tasted that salmon 15 minutes ago." "And table 6 says they ordered the vegetarian dish, but got pork ribs," another waiter added. "What?" Clara rushed to the counter. "I arranged those plates myself. There's no way this happened." More complaints began to pour in. Wrong dishes, strange flavors, incorrect temperatures. It was as if the kitchen had been cursed. "What on earth is going on here?" Victor stormed into the kitchen, clearly frustrated. "I don't know," Clara said, frantically checking every station. "Everything was perfect half an hour ago. Maybe it's nerves," Tony suggested, with a smile that was anything but supportive. "Happens to inexperienced cooks." Clara glared at him. "Tony, I may be a lot of things, but inexperienced under pressure isn't one of them. Have you ever washed dishes on a Friday night? That's like culinary world war." She started to investigate systematically. First, she checked the seasonings. Someone had swapped salt for sugar in several recipes. "This wasn't an accident," she murmured. "What do you mean?" Victor asked. "Look at this." Clara showed the containers. Someone deliberately switched the ingredients. "And look here." She grabbed some of the orders. This one said grilled salmon, but someone changed it to salmon with white sauce. That's why the taste is off. Victor looked around the kitchen, his expression dark. "Who would do this?" "Someone who wants to see us fail," Clara answered. She decided to investigate on her own. Pretending to head to the restroom, Clara slipped out of the kitchen and began discreetly observing the staff. That's when she noticed a woman she didn't recognize. Blonde, middle-aged, wearing a kitchen uniform, but with a badge that looked off. Clara walked over casually. She said, "Are you new here? I don't remember seeing you before." The woman looked visibly nervous. "Oh yes, I'm a substitute," she stammered. "Just for today." "Nice," Clara smiled. "Which agency sent you?" "Agency?" The woman hesitated. From Smith & Associates." Clara nodded, but mentally noted that no such agency existed in Austin. "And which station are you working in?" "I salads prep," the woman answered, but glanced toward the wrong side of the kitchen. "Interesting," Clara said, "because the salad station is on the other side." The woman turned pale. I need to use the restroom," she said, and ran off. Clara didn't hesitate. She followed her at a safe distance. The stranger didn't go to the bathroom. Instead, she walked out the back door of the restaurant and started moving quickly down the street. "Where are you rushing off to?" Clara murmured, continuing to follow. The woman turned a corner and stopped next to a black car. Clara hid behind a dumpster to watch, and that's when she saw who was in the car. Connor Mason. "Did you get it?" Clara heard Connor ask. "Yes," the woman replied. "I switched everything you told me to. Salt for sugar, orders mixed up, a few drops of detergent in the sauces." "Perfect," Connor said. "Sarah, you did an excellent job." Clara felt anger rising like lava from a volcano. "Bastard," she muttered. She was about to confront them when Connor stepped out of the car. "You're sure no one suspected anything?" he asked. "I'm sure," Sarah replied. "I acted like a substitute employee. No one questioned it." "Great. With all this mess, their restaurant will shut down before it even officially opens." Clara couldn't hold back any longer. She stormed out from behind the dumpster. "Connor Mason," she shouted. Connor and Sarah turned, both with looks of total panic. "Clara," Connor stammered. "What are you doing here?" "Finding out you're even more pathetic than I thought," Clara answered, walking toward them. "Sabotage, Connor? Really? That's your business strategy?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Connor tried to lie. "Oh, you don't?" Clara pointed at Sarah. "So your assistant was just doing some food tourism in our kitchen? What an interesting coincidence." Sarah tried to run to the car, but Clara blocked the way. "Not so fast, sweetheart," Clara said. "You and I need to talk." "Sarah, leave," Connor ordered. "Nobody's going anywhere," Clara declared. "You're both coming back with me to the restaurant to explain to everyone what you did." Connor laughed with disdain. "And why would we do that?" Clara pulled her phone from her pocket. "Because I recorded everything," she said, smiling. Your whole little chat about salt for sugar and detergent in the sauces. Very nice for posting on social media, don't you think? Connor's expression changed completely. You wouldn't dare. Connor, Clara said with a smile of pure satisfaction. You clearly don't know me very well. Clara held the phone up like it was a weapon. So Connor, what's it going to be? You come back with me and explain your little sabotage operation, or I post this right here on social media? Connor looked at the phone, then at Sarah, who seemed to be seriously considering running off to another state. You're bluffing, Connor said, though his voice didn't sound very convinced. Want to bet? Clara replied, already opening the Instagram app. Imagine the headline, famous chef sabotages competitor with detergent. It'll go viral in 5 minutes. Clara, wait, Connor said, holding out his hand. Let's talk like adults. Adults? Clara let out a laugh. Connor, you just told your assistant to put detergent in innocent people's food. If that's adult behavior, I'd rather stay a child forever. Sarah tried once again to slip toward the car, but Clara intercepted her. Oh no, sweetheart, Clara said. You're a big part of this story. How did he convince you? Did he pay extra, or do you just enjoy poisoning people? I just did what he told me, Sarah stammered. Of course you did, Clara said. Because following orders is always a good excuse, right? Worked out great in World War II. Connor turned red with rage. Don't compare this to what? Clara cut him off. To sabotage? Because that's exactly what you did, Connor. You sabotaged an event with 200 people because you're afraid of a former dishwasher. Afraid? Connor exploded. Of you? Don't make me laugh. You only got where you are because you're pretty and loud-mouthed. Victor only made that offer because you seduced him. Clara stayed silent for a moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was dangerously calm. Oh, I see, she said. So I don't have any talent at all. Is that it? Exactly, Connor shouted. You're a fraud, an imposter who used feminine charms to trick a rich man. Clara nodded slowly. Interesting theory, she said. How about we put it to the test? What do you mean? Clara stepped closer to Connor, a dangerous spark in her eyes. A cooking duel, she said. You and me, live on television. No feminine charms, no seduction, just pure talent. Connor laughed with disdain. Are you crazy? Why would I do that? Because you're so afraid of losing that you have to sabotage the competition, Clara answered. Or because deep down, way deep down, you know I'm better than you. That's ridiculous. Then accept the challenge, Clara said. Unless you're afraid of getting beaten by a pretty loudmouth. Connor was furious. Fine, he shouted. I accept. But when I win, you'll shut down your pathetic restaurant and disappear from Austin. And when I win, Clara said smiling, you'll shut down your restaurant and disappear from the culinary world forever. They stared at each other like two gunslingers in the Old West. Deal? Connor said. Clara agreed. That's when Victor came running around the corner. Clara, he shouted. Where have you been? The whole restaurant is looking for you. He stopped when he saw Connor and Sarah. What's going on here? He asked. Nothing much, Clara answered casually. I just found out who's been sabotaging our kitchen and challenged him to a cooking duel that will decide the future of our restaurants. Victor blinked several times. Sorry, what? That's exactly what you heard, Connor said. Your partner challenged me to a live cooking duel. The loser shuts down their restaurant. Victor looked at Clara as if she had just declared she wanted to travel to Mars. Clara, have you lost your mind? Maybe, she replied. But I'm tired of people thinking I only got here because of my looks. It's time to prove I've got substance. And if you lose, I won't lose. Clara said with a confidence she didn't even know she had. Victor stayed silent for a long moment, processing the situation. You know what? He finally said. This is a brilliant idea. Connor and Clara looked at him, surprised. What do you mean? They both asked at the same time. Pure marketing. Victor explained, eyes gleaming. A live cooking duel between the two of you? After all this media scandal, it'll be the culinary event of the year, Clara smiled. You'll back this? Not only will I back it, I'll turn it into the biggest culinary event Austin has ever seen, Victor said. Connor, are you ready for this? Connor hesitated for a moment, probably wondering if he had gotten into something bigger than he imagined. Of course I am, he said, trying to sound confident. Perfect, Victor said. I'll call the Supreme Kitchen producers tomorrow. How about 2 weeks from now? 2 weeks. Clara swallowed hard. Isn't that too little time? It's enough time for you to train, Victor said. Unless you're afraid. Afraid? Clara laughed. Please. I was just worried Connor might not be able to learn how to cook in 2 weeks. Connor turned purple with rage. You'll regret this, he muttered. The only thing I'll regret, Clara replied, is not having done this sooner. 2 weeks, 14 days to prepare for the most important showdown of her life. How did a simple dishwasher end up in a situation like this? In the following days, Clara dedicated herself to training as if it were the culinary Olympics. She woke up at 5 in the morning, stayed in the kitchen until midnight, testing recipes, perfecting techniques, creating new dishes. Victor hired a nutritionist and a personal trainer to help her. But Clara was so focused she barely noticed the extra care. You need to rest, said Tony, who ironically had become one of her biggest supporters after discovering Connor's sabotage. Rest is for the weak, Clara replied, chopping vegetables with the precision of a surgeon. On the 10th day of training, Clara was trying out a new cooking technique when suddenly everything started spinning around her. Hey, guys, she said, holding on to the counter. Can someone stop the floor from spinning? It was the last thing she said before fainting. She woke up in the hospital, with Victor sitting by her bed looking worried. How do you feel? He asked. Like I was run over by a truckload of potatoes, Clara replied. What happened? You fainted in the kitchen, Victor explained. The doctor said your blood pressure is sky high and you're under extreme stress. At that moment, Dr. Williams entered the room. Miss Rivera, he said, I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation. Your body is in a constant state of alert. If you continue like this, you could develop serious heart problems. Clara tried to sit up in bed. Doctor, I have a cooking duel in 4 days. I can't. You won't be in any duel, the doctor interrupted. You need complete rest for at least 2 weeks. Clara looked at Victor, panic in her eyes. I can't quit now, she whispered. Not after all this. Victor held her hand. Your health is more important than any duel, he said. But Connor will say I gave up out of fear. Let him talk, Victor replied. You've already proven your worth 1,000 times. Clara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of it all. In 4 days, she would have to face Connor in the most important duel of her life, and now she wasn't even sure she'd be strong enough to stand. Clara spent 3 days in the hospital, and Victor never left her side, not even to shower. He had turned the chair next to her bed into a kind of mobile office, with a laptop, papers, and an impressive collection of empty coffee cups. You don't have to stay here, Clara said for the 10th time. I'm sure you have more important things to do. Like what? Victor asked without looking up from his computer. I don't know. Run your food empire? Count your money? Buy a yacht? I already have a yacht, Victor answered casually. Clara stared at him. Of course you do, Ramat. Next question. How many cars do you own? Why do you want to know? Morbid curiosity, she said. I want to figure out how many years of dishwasher wages each one is worth. Victor finally looked at her. Clara, you need to drop the duel. We've already talked about this, she replied, crossing her arms. I'm not quitting. The doctor said you could have heart problems if you keep pushing like this. And I said I'd rather die cooking than live knowing I gave up. Clara shot back. Besides, if I die during the duel, it'll be great for marketing. Chef dies for her art. Very dramatic. Victor shook his head. That's not funny. It's a little funny, Clara insisted. You just don't want to admit it because you're too worried to see the humor. Victor stood up and began pacing the small room. Why is this so important to you? He asked. Why can't you just let Connor talk to himself? Clara stayed silent for a long moment, fiddling with the edge of the sheet. Because my mother died without ever being recognized, she finally said. Victor stopped pacing. What do you mean? My mother, Elena Rivera, was the best cook I've ever known, Clara began, her voice quieter than usual. She worked in small restaurants, hotel kitchens, anywhere that would take her. She never had a culinary degree, never had the chance to show what she could really do. Victor sat down on the bed beside her. What happened to her? She died of cancer when I was 22, Clara said, wiping away a stubborn tear. Right to the end, she was planning to open a little restaurant. She used to say that one day everyone would know Elena Rivera could cook. And she never got the chance. Never. Clara shook her head. She died washing dishes on the night shift to pay for her treatment. In the end, she made me promise one thing. What was it? Clara looked straight into Victor's eyes. That I would never give up on a dream out of fear. That if I ever had a chance to show my talent, I wouldn't back down. Victor understood. That's why you can't walk away from the duel. Exactly, Clara said. It's not just about me. It's about everyone like my mother, people with talent who never get the opportunity. If I give up now, I'm giving up on her too. Victor was quiet for a moment. Your mother would be proud, he said at last. You think so? I'm sure of it, Victor answered. She raised a daughter who doesn't back down from anything. That's a rare gift. Clara smiled for the first time in days. And what about you? She asked. Why did you stop cooking? Victor stiffened. It's a long story. I'm in a hospital, Clara said. I literally have nothing better to do than listen to long stories. Victor sighed and leaned back in his chair. I had a restaurant in New York, he began. Small, but it was growing. It had been my dream since I was a kid. What happened? A customer had a severe allergic reaction to one of my dishes, Victor said, his voice heavy with guilt. He ended up in the hospital. He almost died. Clara winced. Wow. But it was an accident, right? Of course it was, Victor replied. But at the time, I blamed myself completely. I thought, if I can't cook without putting people at risk, then I shouldn't be cooking at all. And that's when you became a businessman. Exactly. Safer to run restaurants than to cook in them, Victor said. At least that's what I told myself. Clara studied him for a moment. You know that's nonsense, right? What do you mean? Victor, accidents happen, Clara said. Do you think every chef in the world quit the first time someone choked on something? It's not the same. Yes, it is. Clara cut him off. You got scared and used that as an excuse to stop doing what you loved. Victor looked offended. That's not what happened. Yes, it was, Clara insisted. And you know how I know? Because I did the same thing. After my mother died, I spent years washing dishes instead of trying to cook professionally. I was afraid of failing, of not being good enough, of disappointing her memory. And what changed? You, Clara said simply. When you gave me that opportunity, I realized that the fear of trying was worse than the fear of failing. Victor looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Clara. Yes, you're amazing. I know, she replied with a playful smile. But it's nice to hear you say it. Victor laughed and leaned closer. Do you always know what to say? Not always, Clara admitted. Sometimes I say nonsense, like now, when I'm nervous because you're so close and I probably look like I've spent 3 days in a hospital. You look beautiful, Victor said softly. Liar, Clara whispered. But keep going. And then finally, after weeks of tension, misunderstandings, and missed chances, Victor leaned in and kissed her. It was a gentle kiss, tender, full of all the feelings they had been holding back. Clara felt as if she had waited her whole life for that moment. When they pulled apart, she smiled. Took you long enough, she said. Was it worth the wait? Victor asked. Maybe, Clara replied. But I'll need a second opinion to be sure. Victor was about to kiss her again when a nurse walked into the room. Sorry to interrupt, she said with a mischievous smile. But someone's here with a summons for Miss Rivera. Clara and Victor quickly pulled apart. A what? Clara asked. A man in a suit entered the room carrying a folder of documents. Miss Clara Rivera? He asked. That's me, Clara answered, confused. I have a legal summons for you, the man said, handing her the papers. Mr. Connor Mason is filing an injunction to prevent you from participating in the cooking duel scheduled for this week. Clara snatched the papers from his hand and began reading quickly. What is he claiming? She asked, growing more irritated by the second. Physical and mental incapacity to compete, based on your recent hospitalization, the man explained. Clara looked at Victor, then back at the papers, then at the man. Can he do that? If the judge accepts the request, yes, the man replied. The hearing is tomorrow morning. After the man left, Clara stared at the papers with a mix of anger and disbelief. That man is a worm, she said. A crawling, cowardly worm. Clara? No, she cut him off. Don't you dare say, Clara, maybe it's for the best. Connor is trying to stop me from competing because he knows he'll lose, and I'm not going to let that happen. Victor sighed. What do you want to do? Clara stood up from the bed with renewed determination. I'm going to that hearing tomorrow, and I'm going to show the judge, Connor, and everyone else that I am perfectly capable of crushing any arrogant chef who stands in my way." And as Clara prepared herself mentally for yet another battle, Victor couldn't help but admire the incredible woman he was falling for more and more. The court hearing was faster than Clara expected. Victor had hired the best legal team in Austin, and when Connor tried to argue that she was mentally unstable for agreeing to a cooking duel, Clara's lawyer simply asked the judge if he thought all professional chefs should be considered insane. The judge laughed and denied the injunction. Connor walked out of the courtroom with the sourest expression Clara had ever seen. "See you on stage, darling," she shouted after him. "And this time, there won't be any sabotage to save you." 3 days later, the big day finally arrived. The studio of the show Duel of the Titans was packed. It was the most anticipated culinary event of the year, and tickets had sold out in 15 minutes. Clara was backstage, wearing a flawless chef's uniform that Victor had ordered made just for her. "How do you feel?" he asked, appearing by her side. "Like I'm about to throw up, faint, and run to another state all at once," Clara replied. "Other than that, I'm great." Victor smiled and held her hands. "You're going to do amazing, or I'll be completely humiliated on national television," Clara said. "But then again, that's already happened, so I know how it feels, Clara." "I'm joking." She cut him off. "Well, half joking. Honestly, I'm terrified, but I'm trying to cover it up with humor because it's my defense mechanism. Do you want me to stay here?" "No." Clara shook her head. "Go to the audience. I want to see your face when I win. And if you lose," Clara looked at him with a serious expression, "then you'll have to comfort me with ice cream and bad movies for the rest of my life." Victor laughed and kissed her forehead. "Deal." When Victor left, Clara stayed alone with her thoughts for a few minutes. She closed her eyes and tried to feel her mother's presence. "Mom," she thought, "if you're up there, now would be a good time to give me a little help." "Miss Rivera?" A production assistant appeared. "It's time." Clara took a deep breath. The studio was in total frenzy. The host, Michael Roberts, was practically shouting with excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the culinary event of the century," he roared. On the right side we have Connor Mason, renowned chef, owner of 3 Michelin-starred restaurants, and winner of 5 national competitions. Connor's supporters cheered loudly. He waved with his usual arrogance, clearly confident. And on the left, the host continued, we have Clara Rivera, the former dishwasher who conquered the world with 4 potatoes and a lot of talent. Clara's supporters cheered even louder. She waved shyly, still processing the fact that half the studio was rooting for her. "The rules are simple," Michael announced. 90 minutes to prepare a dish that represents your essence as a chef. The judges will decide the winner. And the loser, well, you know what happens. Clara looked at Connor on the other side of the stage. He was making that serious, concentrated face he probably practiced in the mirror. "Competitors, you have access to the finest ingredients in the world," the host went on. "And now let the duel begin." The timer started and Connor rushed straight to the most expensive ingredients. Caviar, truffles, foie gras, prime cuts of meat. Clara stood still for a moment, watching. Then she calmly walked to the basic ingredient section. "What is she doing?" one of the commentators murmured. "Is she going for potatoes again?" Clara picked simple ingredients: chicken, potatoes, onions, garlic, fresh herbs, eggs. Things her mother would use. "Clara Rivera is clearly sticking to the same strategy that made her famous," another judge commented. "But will it work against a chef like Connor Mason?" While Connor set up a complex operation with molecular techniques and elaborate presentations, Clara began something completely different. She was making pollo de la abuela, grandma's chicken, her mother's special recipe. But it wasn't just any chicken. Clara had perfected the recipe over the years, adding techniques she had learned working in restaurants, while keeping the soul of homemade cooking. "Interesting choice from Clara," commented the chef judge. "She's doing something that looks simple, but look at the technique. This isn't amateur food." While Connor ran back and forth, clearly stressed with his complex creation, Clara worked with an almost zen calm. She seasoned the chicken with a spice blend she created on the spot, browned the potatoes with a method that left them crispy outside and creamy inside. 30 minutes left," shouted the host. Connor was sweating. His station looked like a battlefield, with pans and ingredients scattered everywhere. Clara was plating her dish with the precision of an artist. 15 minutes. Connor shouted something about a reduction not being ready and started redoing part of the dish. Clara was adding the final touches, a sprinkle of fresh herbs, a drizzle of special olive oil, a pinch of something no one could identify. Time. Connor looked at his dish with panic. He clearly hadn't finished everything he wanted. Clara stepped back and smiled. Her dish was perfect. Let's start with Connor Mason, the host announced. Connor presented an impressive creation. Lobster with champagne foam, acetra caviar, and port wine reduction, served with truffle puree and 24-month aged Parmesan crisp. Very sophisticated, one of the judges commented after tasting. Technically flawless, complex, well-balanced flavors. Now Clara Rivera. Clara took a deep breath. I made pollo de la abuela, she said. Grandma's chicken. It's my mother Elena Rivera's recipe. She spent her whole life cooking with love and never got recognition. Today, she does. She presented a dish that looked simple, but had something special. The chicken perfectly golden, the potatoes that looked like little works of art, the colorful vegetables arranged like a painting. The first judge tasted it and stopped chewing. He closed his eyes. Tasted again. He began. It's extraordinary. The second judge completed. How did you achieve this flavor? It's the right mix of technique and love, Clara answered. The third judge tasted and immediately took another bite. Can I have more? He asked. The audience whispered in surprise. The three judges tasted Connor's dish again, then went back to Clara's, and then back to Clara's once more. The first judge murmured, in 20 years of judging competitions, I've never tasted anything like this. It's food that tells a story, said the second. It's not just flavor, it's emotion. Connor was starting to turn pale. Judges, said the host, have you reached a decision? The three of them exchanged glances and nodded. We have, said the head judge. The studio went completely silent. Clara held her breath. The winner of the Duel of Titans is... The silence felt endless. Clara Rivera. The studio exploded. Clara's supporters cheered like it was the World Cup final. She stood still for a second, trying to process what had just happened. She had won. Truly won. Connor's face was redder than she had ever seen it, but he had to shake her hand for the cameras. Congratulations, he said through clenched teeth. Thank you, Clara replied. It was a pleasure cooking against you. And when she looked at the audience and saw Victor giving her a standing ovation, tears in his eyes and the biggest smile she had ever seen, she knew this was only the beginning of her real story. The chaos that followed Clara's victory was like a hurricane of joy. Reporters ran back and forth, photographers fired off flashes non-stop, and the production team desperately tried to keep some control of the situation. Clara was still on stage, holding the golden trophy, when Connor approached her again. This time, he didn't look angry. In fact, he looked human. Clara, he said, extending his hand. Connor, she replied cautiously. You're not going to try to sue me again, are you? He shook his head and, for the first time since they had met, smiled genuinely. I want to apologize, he said, for what I did at your restaurant, for the accusations, for everything. Clara blinked several times, as if she were seeing a mirage. Sorry, could you repeat that? She asked. I thought I just heard Connor Mason apologizing, but maybe it was a problem with my ears. Connor chuckled softly. You heard me right, and I also wanted to say, you're an extraordinary chef. One of the best I've ever seen. Clara's jaw dropped. Okay, now I'm sure I'm hallucinating, she said. Can someone check if they put something weird in the water? I'm serious, Connor insisted. Your dish? It was incredible. It wasn't luck, it wasn't chance. It was pure talent. Clara studied him for a moment, trying to detect any sarcasm or trick. Are you all right? She asked. Did you hit your head when you lost? Clara, Connor said laughing. Can you just accept a compliment like a normal person? I don't know, she replied. I've never gotten a compliment from you. I don't know the protocol. Connor extended his hand again. Congratulations, you deserve every second of this victory. Clara shook his hand, still a little suspicious. Thank you. And Connor? Next time you want to compete with me, how about doing it without sabotage? It'll be more fun. Deal, he said, and for the first time, Clara believed him. After Connor left, Clara was surrounded by journalists, but her attention was fixed on only one person in the audience. Victor was trying to reach her, pushing his way through the crowd. When he finally made it, he lifted her off the ground and spun her in the air. "You did it!" he shouted. "I knew you would." "Put me down, you crazy man." Clara laughed. "You're gonna drop us." Victor set her down but didn't let go. "I'm so proud of you," he said. "Thank you," Clara replied, still processing everything. "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't even believe in myself." "Always," Victor said. Clara looked around at all the commotion, the cameras, the trophy still in her hands. "Victor," she said suddenly. "Yes? I need to tell you something important." "What?" Clara took a deep breath. "I don't want to be your partner anymore." Victor looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Because of what happened." "Clara, if this is about the newspapers, that's not it," she cut him off. "It's because I realized what I really want to be." "And what's that?" Clara smiled. "I want to be a chef, a real chef. I want to be in the kitchen creating dishes, cooking for people. I don't want to sit in meetings talking about profit margins and marketing strategies." Victor looked at her for a moment. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Clara answered. "Partnerships are for people like you, who know how to deal with numbers and spreadsheets. I just want to cook. That's what makes me happy." Victor stayed quiet for so long that Clara started to feel nervous. "Are you mad?" she asked. "Mad?" Victor burst out laughing. "Clara, you just gave me the perfect answer." "What do you mean?" That's when Victor did something completely unexpected. He got down on one knee right there, in the middle of the stage, in front of hundreds of people and television cameras. "Victor, what are you doing?" Clara asked, mortified. "Get up, everyone's watching." "Let them watch," Victor said, smiling. "Clara Rivera, will you be my chef?" "You don't need to kneel to offer me a job," Clara said, trying to pull him up. "Don't you think that's a little too dramatic?" "I'm not finished," Victor said, holding her hands. "Clara Rivera, will you be my chef and also my girlfriend?" Clara stopped trying to lift him. "What?" she asked, her voice a little shaky. "You heard me," Victor said. "I'm asking you to be my chef and my girlfriend, both, at the same time." Clara looked around. Every camera was focused on them. The entire audience had gone silent. Even the reporters had stopped talking. "Victor," she whispered. "Are you out of your mind? You're asking me out on national television?" "I am," he answered calmly. "Why?" "Because I'm in love with you," Victor said as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "And because I'm tired of pretending I'm not." Clara felt her knees go weak. You're what?" "In love," Victor repeated. "In love. Do you want me to spell it out?" "Don't be sarcastic with me when I'm in shock," Clara protested. "So what's the answer?" Victor asked. Clara looked at him, kneeling on the floor with that smile that made her heart race. "To which question?" she asked. "You asked two. To both." Clara went silent for what felt like an eternity. "Are you sure?" she finally asked. "Because I should warn you, I'm stubborn. I talk too much, I make jokes at the wrong time, and my idea of fancy clothing is a clean apron." "Perfect," Victor said. "And I can be a little dramatic sometimes." "A little?" Victor laughed. "Okay, very dramatic," Clara admitted. "And?" Clara looked around once more at all the people waiting for her answer. "And, yes," she finally said. "Yes to what?" "To everything," Clara answered, pulling him up. "To being your chef, your girlfriend, and whatever other crazy thing you come up with." Victor stood and kissed her right there, in front of everyone. The audience exploded in applause and cheers. The cameras caught everything. And Clara, in the middle of all that chaos, realized she was finally exactly where she wanted to be. When they pulled apart, she looked at Victor with a playful smile. "But just to be clear," she said, "if you think you're going to give me orders in the kitchen just because we're dating, you're very mistaken." "Wouldn't dream of it," Victor replied. "Good," Clara said, "because I run the kitchen. You can run the rest, but the kitchen is mine." "Deal. And another thing," Clara continued, "no giving me flowers every week. I prefer special ingredients." "Noted. And if you try to impress me with fancy restaurants, I'll drag you out for street tacos." "I'm counting on it," Victor said, laughing. And while the studio was still celebrating around them, Clara realized she had found not only the love of her life, but also her true place in the world. 6 months after the duel that had changed her life, Clara was in the kitchen of Gourmet Potatoes, the name she had insisted on for the restaurant, Despite Victor's protests about sophisticated marketing, when he showed up with a strange look on his face. "Clara," he said, "how about we go out today?" "Go out?" she asked, without looking up from the recipe she was testing. "Victor, it's Saturday. Saturday is our busiest day. You know that." "Tony can handle things for a few hours," Victor insisted. Clara finally looked at him. "Are you okay? You look nervous. Like, more nervous than when that New York Times critic came to dinner." "I'm fine," Victor lied shamelessly. "I just want to spend some time with my girlfriend outside the kitchen." "Suspicious," Clara murmured. "But fine. Where are we going?" "Surprise," Victor answered. An hour later, they were at Lake Travis Beach with a picnic basket that Victor had mysteriously arranged. "Okay, confess," Clara said, sitting down on the checkered blanket. "You don't do picnics. You barely know what a picnic is. Last week you asked if a sandwich needed a plate. Maybe I'm becoming more romantic," Victor answered nervously. "Or maybe you're up to something." Clara shot back. "Your eyes are doing that weird thing." "What weird thing?" "That thing when you're hiding something. Like when you bought that $15,000 ice cream machine and tried to convince me it just showed up in the kitchen." Victor laughed, but Clara noticed he kept fidgeting with his pocket. "Victor," she said suddenly, "is there something in your pocket?" "No," he answered a little too quickly. "Liar," Clara said. "What is it?" "Clara, if it's another expensive kitchen gadget, I swear." Victor knelt down on the sand. Clara stopped talking. "Victor, what are you doing?" He pulled a small velvet box out of his pocket. "Clara Rivera," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "will you marry me?" Clara stared at the box as if it were some alien object. That's a ring?" she asked. "It's a ring," Victor confirmed. "A wedding ring? An engagement ring, technically." Clara kept staring at the box. "Clara?" Victor asked, worried. "Can you say something?" "You're asking me to marry you," Clara said, as if she were processing very complex information. "I am. On a beach, I am. With a picnic, I am." Clara finally looked at him. "Why not in the kitchen?" she asked. "I would have preferred the kitchen. That's where we met, where it all started," Victor laughed. "Because you would have gotten distracted with some recipe and forgotten to answer." "True," Clara admitted. "Yesterday I forgot you were talking to me because I was thinking about a sauce variation." "So?" Victor asked. "What's the answer?" Clara looked at him, kneeling in the sand, holding that little box. "Yes," she said. "Of course yes, you silly. Did you think I would say no?" Victor smiled with relief and slipped the ring on her finger. It was simple and elegant, exactly her style. "It's perfect," Clara said, admiring it. "But just to be clear, if you think marriage is going to make me cook less or complain less about your crazy ideas, you're very mistaken." "Wouldn't dream of it," Victor replied, kissing her. A year later, the restaurant Gourmet Potatoes was on the list of the top 10 in Austin. Clara had become a small celebrity, appearing on cooking shows and in magazines. Women from all over the country wrote to her, sharing how her story had inspired them to follow their own dreams. It was a Thursday night and the restaurant was packed for a special event. Clara was serving the dish that had changed her life, the famous 4 potatoes. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said to the guests, "this dish represents something very simple, that it doesn't matter where you come from or what your starting point is. What matters is what you do with what you have." The audience applauded, and Clara smiled, seeing Victor proud in the front row. "And now," she continued, "I have an announcement to make. Victor and I are getting married. Right here, in the restaurant, next week." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. A week later, Gourmet Potatoes was decorated with simple flowers and golden lights. All the staff were there, dressed in their best uniforms. Tony, who had become one of Clara's biggest supporters, was officiating the ceremony. Apparently, he had a license no one knew about. Clara looked beautiful in a simple cream-colored dress, holding a bouquet made of herbs from the restaurant's garden. "Are you sure you want to get married in the kitchen?" the makeup artist asked. "Absolutely," Clara replied. "It's where I fell in love with him. Well, technically, it's where he tasted my food and fell in love with me, but the result's the same." When it was time for the ceremony, Clara walked through the restaurant floor to the kitchen, where Victor was waiting by the main stove. "Nice choice of place," he said, smiling. "Thought you'd like it," Clara answered. Tony began the ceremony in his own style. We're gathered here because these two crazy people fell in love in a kitchen and decided they wanted to stay together forever, he said. And as a witness to all this romance full of ingredients and spice debates, I can say they're perfect for each other. When it was time for the vows, Clara went first. "Victor," she said, "you gave me the chance no one else would. You believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. And more importantly, you let me run the kitchen without complaining." Everyone laughed. "I promise to cook for you for the rest of my life, even when you ask for fancy dishes I don't know how to make. I promise to love you even when you buy expensive equipment without asking me. And I promise to always remind you that, at the end of the day, the best food is made with love." Victor was clearly emotional when it was his turn. "Clara," he said, "you taught me that cooking isn't about technique or expensive ingredients. It's about putting a piece of your soul into every dish. You made me remember why I fell in love with cooking. And more importantly, you made me fall in love with you." He paused to wipe his eyes. "I promise to always support your dreams, even the wildest ones. I promise never to question your recipes, even when they involve strange ingredients. And I promise to always remember that you're the chef, and I'm just the lucky guy who won your heart." "The rings," Tony announced. They exchanged simple wedding bands, made by the same jeweler who had crafted the engagement ring. "By the power vested in me by the state of Texas and the internet," Tony said with a smile, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the chef." Victor kissed Clara right there in the middle of the kitchen, surrounded by pots, stoves, and all the friends who had become family. When they finally pulled apart, Clara looked around at the restaurant full of happy people, the staff clapping and Victor smiling by her side. "You know," she said loud enough for everyone to hear, "to think it all started with potatoes and a crazy competition, and ended with a wedding in a kitchen." Victor finished. "It's not over yet," Clara said, with that playful smile he loved. "Now the real adventure begins." And as everyone laughed and celebrated, Clara knew she was right. This was just another recipe in her life. A pinch of craziness, a generous dose of love, and enough potatoes to feed all the dreams still to come. What did you think of Clara and Victor's story? Leave your opinion in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give it? Subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss any of our stories. And take a moment to watch more touching stories right here on the final screen.